Uh,
Can everybody hear me okay?
Brother Kwame, y'all.
Okay.
As long as you don't go down in your voice, keep it at that level. You know.
I got you. All right, so this past week or so, I found 2,000 Seasons online. And it was an interesting book because Gye-Nyame has this way of looking at the world. I can't say I'm all there with his way of looking at the world yet, but through the eyes of 2,000 Seasons, I'm going to try to at least give you a kind of picture of how he sees where we're at, how we got here, and where we need to go. So chapter 1, the way. The way is the best of our cultural practices that had us at one with the world. And somewhere along that way, we kind of got sidetracked. And so, going into chapter 2, the ostentatious cripples, you get these parasites who start coming, and we first think of them as visitors, but as a parasite does, it starts to feed on you and weaken your body, and then even inviting the viruses in and whatnot. And so that takes us through chapters 3 and 4. The Predator and the White Destroyer. The Predator was synonymous with, but could include more, the Arab, who first came in as somebody who was in need, and we fed them, and then all of a sudden they got full of themselves and knew their way of life was better than ours, and somewhere along the way, because we had lost track of the way, we started believing them. But always, we had our resistance and freedom fighters, as it were, and we ran. Now, there's some argument on whether that was the best thing to do or not, but under the circumstances, I understand why they did it. Live to fight another day, right? So they ran. And they ran right into the hands of that group of people we call the White Destroyer. Those were the white people coming by sea, and of course they wanted to do everything from changing our worldview to selling us, to taking possession of the land, and killing our animals for sport. So these were foreign ideas to us. And so, moving into chapter 5, which is a very long chapter and has so many lessons in it, but I expect you to read the book sooner or later, so I'm going to keep it short. The chapter 5 is called The Dance of Love. Now, there's several kinds of initiations going on. But among these initiations, there's these group of women, sisters who are coming of age, right? And they get to choose their male. And it's arranged in such a way where there's a circle. And then you have these sisters within the circle. And usually the idea is to be the last one in the circle. It's kind of like a dance contest, but you have to have a great deal of skill and whatnot to be able to dance between the individuals who are making the outer circle. and then you pick your mate. So anyway, the rules of the game were changed by someone of their village calling himself the king, right? And then, of course, you see where they're starting to, well, not only starting at that point because they've been infected by this virus that has taken hold at this point. And in this dance of love, they are able to escape what would be thought of the regular mating, as it were. And they became a select group of initiates. So now, they're called away. Their being called away is their quote-unquote king selling them into slavery because they didn't want to get with his program. So now, they go away from their village on this slave ship, and fast forward, mutiny. So now, in this process of mutiny, you get those who are severely damaged mentally, some physically, some spiritually. And make a long story short, mutiny was a success. So now we move into the next chapter, the return. So now, in most initiations, we understand that the person's called away. They go through their initiation, and then they're called home. Now, one aspect of the dance of love was, of course, what you saw, or what I just explained in terms of the mating ritual. But I believe the real meaning of the chapter is a bit above that. I believe the dance of love was the love for their want to find their way back to our way, what they believe to be the way. And so, in the return home, they're beset by quite a few challenges, as you would expect. Nonetheless, they make it back, but they're not accepted. So they find themselves camped on the outermost reaches of what their village would be. In other words, the Netherman's land, if you if you know what I mean. And there they plan to basically retake their village. Now, the idea is this, in Ayikwe Arma's mindset. Disunity, disunification, dismemberment of our body, our village. That's what the disease is. Reuniting, reunification, remembering our way, and going back to that way is the healing. Now, what's interesting about, let me know when I'm at 10, because I expect you all to go read, so I don't want to carry it any further than that.
5 more.
Okay, I'm doing good. Okay, so where'd I stop?
Remembering
So
our way back.
remembering our way is the healing process. And you know, when Brother Hatem does his fables and whatnot, you can hear the fables in one sense and think, okay, I wonder what this is about. But a lot of times, what makes the fable so memorable is because there's another sense in which you can listen to him, and he always tells you, this is not a porn flick, y'all. Because, I mean, they have such titles as, I mean, and even when you read them, it's like, well, damn.
The cock in the ass.
I mean, it sounds just like, a porn flick, right? And so, in that, when I said the dismembering of us, now, we understand that Asar's body was broken into the 14 parts, and so that was his dismembering. But the other aspect of the dismembering was the taking of his penis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we come back and are made whole, the remembering, in other words, bringing our body back together, bringing our penis back to its proper position, not to lead us, but to use it to make us whole.
Elder Tony, you hear him talk about penis?
Elder Tony is here.
He lied.
Was he here?
No, Elder Tony had another function he had to be
No,
at.
he was here, but he
I think he went to change his
he
clothes.
said he went to change clothes. Well, I don't know where you change the clothes at.
Okay, so again, the main thing is that we have to come together as a village. There are those of us who, in our initiation stage, we're called to bring that way back to where it's supposed to be. The last chapter is the voice. And that's where you have the initiates calling to the village saying, look, we're doing it by the way. Those of you who hear us, come with us so that we can make this right. Now I'm leaving the end of the story
Yes.
for your reading. You'll see,
That's 2006.
and if you can remember my words today, you'll be able to draw
Right.
the correlations, but I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. And the follow-up to 2000 Seasons is The Healer, where he picks up with these initiates and the struggles that they go through to try and heal. It's really, really hard.
And one of the critical things you learn, family, and this is what Brother Wakesa has been trying to really enforce with us, is the idea that victims of losing the way, they're not really your enemy unless they are standing in the midst of war before the person you need to take out. That's the only time they're your enemy. Otherwise, you are not to. I mean, Dr. Nellie Fuller Jr., he would often say, I don't even argue with black people about, things like slavery or how bad racism is or if racism is or that kind of thing. He said he don't even argue with folks like that anymore. And a lot of times I think we need to be of the same mind. You talk with people who are willing to hear, exchange ideas, and if they're willing to hear, you keep talking. But if they want to be combative and all that stuff, then just move on.
Ain't your trial.
Ask them how they like the Lakers. Whoever is Elder Phyllis.
Okay. Next we'll have.
Was it Hot Temp?
Well, we have you and we have Brother Hatem. I thought I'd
You wanna
save
go-
Hatem.
you wanna go now,
No,
Hatem?
I want to save Hatem for last. I want you to go next.
Hang on.
I'll do mine. I have a very, very short video, but I'm going to have to read the rest of what I'm going to show in the video. And I'm going to try to do justice with voice inflection, okay?
Uh-oh.
I'm going to try to see if I can do
We need
justice
to turn
to
the
it.
lights out for you.
If you would, ma'am, that would be excellent. Let's see if this thing finds me again. Okay. Okay, this is going to be really quick on the video. Here we go. Let's see if the sound comes through, okay?
At some point in our lives, someone makes an inevitable mark, plants a dynamic seed, or ignites an internal fire.
I see the book, Papa. I see the book.
Oh, here come my preacher man TV.
Let's do this again.
What happened to your eyes,
Not that,
Papa Down?
it's not that big.
I got you.
Let's do it again.
In our lives, someone makes an inevitable mark, plants a dynamic seed, or ignites an internal
I see
fire.
the book, Papa. I see the book.
Oh, here come my preacher man TV.
What happened to your eyes, Papa Down?
It's a long story, darling. I got you now, boy. You got no rest. I know it. Sure as you born. Sure as you born.
Now, that trailer, it's a movie that is yet to come out. And I just happened to find this trailer because it was not announced nowhere. And I've had this book since '99. And if you wouldn't mind turning the light back on.
I got it.
And this is from that is being made into a movie based upon slave narratives from this book that I have, and it's actually from a compilation. What I'm getting ready to read, I have it on cassette tape. And the only reason why I did not bring it was if that cassette tape, if I pop it in here and this cassette tape break, I have no means of recreating it. Okay?
You ain't trying. Why don't you transfer it to MP3?
I intend to, but I'm talking about, but for today,
I'm just saying.
I didn't want to take that
I
chance.
take that chance. I did it.
No, I can't, because see, I can't get this tape anymore.
I know.
So I'm gonna wait and I'm gonna transfer it when I get home and do it. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do justice. The person who did this is Tania Stewart. Now what I'm gonna be reading is actually the part that actually she is saying on the in the part that actually spurred them to make this into a movie. Apparently she's going to make this into a movie, and you'll understand why it should be a movie, hopefully after I give it some life by reading it, okay? All right, here we go. This is from, I'm going to be speaking the part that she would be speaking. Her part, Tania Stewart, from the Smithsonian Productions and Institute of Language and Culture, Remembering Slavery, those who survived to tell their story. You heard the music. My name is Tania Stewart. When I was a little girl about 5 or 6 years old, I used to sit on the garret, the front porch. In the Mississippi Delta, the front porch is called the garret. I listened to my Papa Dallas. He was blind. He had these ugly scars around his eyes. One day I asked, as you saw, Papa Dallas, what happened to his eyes? Well, daughter, he answered, when I was mighty young, just about your age, I used to steal away under a big oak tree, and I tried to learn my alphabet. so that I could learn to read my Bible. But one day, the overseer caught me, and he dragged me out on the plantation, and he called out for all the field hands. And he turned to him and said, "Let this be a lesson to all you darkies. You ain't got no right to learn to read." And then, daughter, he whooped me, and he whooped me, and he whooped me. And daughter, as if that wasn't enough, he turned around and he burned my eyes out. At that instant, I began to cry. The tears were streaming down my cheeks, meeting under my chin. This is her talking. But he cautioned, "Don't you cry for me now, daughter. Now you listen to me. I want you to promise me one thing. Promise me that you're going to pick up every book you can and you're going to read it from cover to cover. You see, today, daughter, ain't nobody going to whip you or burn your eyes out because you want to learn to read. Promise me, you're going to go all the way through school as far as you can. And one more thing, I want you to promise me that you're going to tell all the children my story. Papa Dallas survived slavery, and I kept my promise. I'm now at a university professor, a PhD, and an actress. He and many others deserve to have their story told. In the late 30s and early 40s, federal and private agencies sent interviewers across the South in an effort to document music and culture. Among those interviewed were African Americans like Papa Dallas, who had been born into slavery and lived through the Civil War. Many of the interviews were documented on paper. Some of the interviews were able to record their voices. In this program, you will hear parts of these original recordings and dramatic readings of some of the written transcripts by actors Debbie Allen, Lou Gossett Jr., Esther Rowe, James Earl Jones, Clifton Davis, and others. And now, former slaves tell you in their own words, in their lives of their lives in bondage, and what was like this, what it was like to be a slave no more. And then I'll stop on it because it goes into another that I actually have. This part I actually have the video of. I just happened to. I had a lot of different videos I downloaded in case I couldn't get this to work like I wanted today. But it was fortunate it did work for me. Because some of you may have heard a brother named Fountain Hughes. Don't ring a bell? Okay. I'm going to say that for when you get finished. Or do you think you need to?
You know what I do, man. You get it while you can.
While he's doing that,
It only take me a second.
okay, we're going to say there's a new book out, Zora Neale Hurston, Barracoon. And she interviews, I think, the last living person who lived through enslavement.
Yes, she did.
And she has a nice spin on it. It's called Barracoon.
What's it called?
Barracoon.
Spell.
Barracoon.
And it's available on Audible, so you can ride to work.
Oh, I knew it was on Audible. I wouldn't got it on paper. Okay. Yeah, Zora Neale does it.
I just saw it the other day.
Yeah.
I got it. I ain't listened to it yet.
Let's see if I can get this too.
Probably not the only book of hers I haven't read.
So
I
you
get
knew-
it. I
Oh,
get it.
okay.
I get it.
So you were able to find it on audio, 2000 Seasons?
No, I went to,
As soon as I get this thing
it
to.
was Context of White Supremacy. This brother, I'm not sure where he's at, but he read it on his,
Okay.
Yes. The sir apparently went blind a year before this interview was taken.
narrative from the movie?
No, that one is a narrative from the book, but it's different. It's a couple of different stories. I just happen to have, like I said,
There I am.
Yeah, you're there for something else. Now I got lost my place here. Come on now. I'll get it. I got a couple ways to do this. Come on. This don't. Okay, let me see if this is going to play for me. If not, I have to do my backup move.
January 12th, 1999. My name is Houghton Hughes. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson, and now I am 101 years old.
They are voices that break a silence.
We were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses with cows.
Witnesses to a time we only know from photographs and the written word. But they were there.
Okay, come on.
January 12th, 1999. My name is Houghton Hughes. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson, and now I am 101 years old.
They are voices that break a silence.
We were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses with cows.
Witnesses to a time we only know from photographs and the written word.
Can you hear?
But they were there.
Sit on that pretty place. All day long, between them soldiers going back to silent things, different places. Some soldiers
Born to slavery. And now we can hear them speak.
Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog.
Found voices, the slave's life, told by those who lived it.
That was a picture of Fountain Hughes as I asked.
From ABC News, this is Nightline.
This is back in
Reporting from Washington,
99.
Ted Koppel.
Imagine for a moment what it'll be like for Americans 2 or 3 generations hence. Assuming, of course, that we haven't blown ourselves back into the Stone Age and that someone can still figure out what format everything was in. Assuming all of that, our great-great-grandchildren will know more about us than any generation in the history of the world has ever known about its ancestors. There'll be photographs, of course, black and white and color, audio cassettes, and in a few families, 8 and 16 millimeter film. And there will be thousands upon thousands of miles of videotape on which we will have recorded everything that struck us as interesting or funny or important about the milestones of our lives and those of our friends and families. They will be able to see and hear us long after we are dead. Imagine if we could only do the same. If we could only bring back the voices and images, and most important of all, the memories of those who lived 100 or more years ago. Well, brace yourselves for a minor miracle. For reasons I'll explain as we go along, we have the voices and the memories and a few black and white photographs to go along of some men and women who were born, some of them 150 years ago. And what makes these recollections all the more remarkable is that these men and women had been bought and sold like so much livestock.
Tell you the truth, when I think of it today, I don't know how I'm living.
I remember that just as well. Look like to me, I can't.
Been slaves all our lives. Your mother was a slave, your sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They know enough about reading right. All that I know, they teach you to mind your master and your mistress. Mama them didn't know where to go. You see, after she was go, just like you turned to mom, she didn't know where to go.
They are haunting voices from the past, not actors reading a script or scholars reading a text, but the actual voices of men and women, Americans, who were born in slavery.
My name is Hampton Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson.
Listen to this.
My grandfather was 115 years old when he died. And now I am 101 years old.
Incredible as it seems, we are listening to the voices of ex-slaves telling of their lives in bondage. Men like Fountain Hughes on the living conditions of slaves in Virginia in the 1860s when he was a teenager.
Some people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. They would sleep on the floor. Tied to them. Just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't like to look at no book.
Women like Laura Smalley describing the makeshift church where slaves worshipped on a big plantation in East Texas.
All the chicks would have there a tub of water sitting just like this thing is, you know, that would catch your voice, and they would have chicks around that tub, all of them get around the tub.
Or Harriet Smith, remembering what she saw as a small girl during the final days of the Civil War.
And so I stood on that picket fence all day long, seeing them soldiers going back to silent homes, different places. Colored soldiers in those. Right along by our home, it was a two-story house, the white.
These recorded memories were among thousands of interviews done with ex-slaves in the 1930s and 40s. The majority were written interviews published in pamphlets and books. A handful were recorded on the latest equipment of the day, 200-pound portable recorders that a hardy band of folklorists lugged across the South.
You gotta go free, you know. Of course, but I have...
These recordings, once scratchy, distant, filled with the crackle and pop of that primitive equipment,
Nothing worries me. My head ain't even white.
now have been cleaned up through the magic of modern technology, digitized.
I'm the oldest one that I know that's living.
The age of the computer has reached back to polish a memory from another century, 150 years ago.
Can you remember slavery days very well? Of course, I remember all our white folks, and all the names of them, all the children. Call every one of the children's names. Who did you own? Jim Bundy, the baby boy.
The results of these digitally enhanced recordings are arresting, almost unbelievable. The idea of hearing the voices of actual slaves from the plantations of the Old South is as powerful, as startling really, as if you could hear Abraham Lincoln or Robert E. Lee speak. Listen again to Fountain Hughes, who was born in 1848.
We were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs and all like that. Have an auction bench, and they put you up on the bench and beat on you the same as you're beating on cattle, you know.
Much of what these three former slaves say may at first seem unremarkable. Much of what they say may surprise and upset. And their calm demeanor is at odds with the evil and violence we associate with slavery. Here is 91-year-old Texan Laura Smalley talking in the 1940s about the outcome of a tussle between two women, one black, one white, one slave, one mistress. The mistress tried to slap the slave, but the black woman pushed her into a chair. Laura Smalley was a girl at the time, but she remembers vividly what happened to the black woman when the master came home.
But they take that old woman, poor old woman, carried in the peach orchard and whipped her. And, just tied her hand this way, around the peach orchard tree. I remember that just as well, looked like to me, I can, and round the tree and whipped her. Well, she couldn't do nothing but just kick her feet, just kick her feet. But it just had a clothes all down to her waist, you know. They didn't have a plumb naked, but they had a clothes down to her waist. And every now and then they'd pick her, you know, and then snuff the pipe out on her, you know. Snuff the pipe out on her. You know, them was in the pipe. The way you see the pipe smoking. Blowing out on her? Mm-hmm. Good Lord, have mercy.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by...
Just wanted you to hear some of the voices of slavery. You know, we don't talk about it much, but we need to understand why we don't need to make the same mistakes again. But if you don't ever talk about our history, whether it's good or bad, we constantly repeat ourselves because we haven't been learning anything. I'll stop on that note. Jim, you want to lean into it?
I'm about to lean. Let's see what we can do. All right. So I was kind of, because I wanted to talk about reparations. They put the young girl on, and she kind of took the wind out my sails. You know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna do what I can. I'm gonna do it in the fashion. I'm gonna do it in the fashion that I usually do. We had a folk tale this week, and speaking of African history, we got Brother Aesop. Some will argue with you, but as Kwame say, sometimes it's best not to argue with people about stuff that you know. You don't have to change people's ideas or change people's minds about it. But Aesop was African. He was one of us in a bad situation, and he put these tales together in a format that is basically an African format. Short fables using animals and inanimate objects to get a pertinent lesson across. And the story we covered this week, which kind of got me really, I've been thinking about it for a while, but got me really thinking about this whole reparations piece, was the story of the plane tree. And the story of the plane tree is about two travelers that were walking in the hot sun. And they needed to take a break, so they sat down up under a plane tree. As they were sitting in the shadow of the plane tree, cooling themselves off, one of the travelers looked at the other traveler and said, you know, the plane tree is about the most useless tree in the world. It don't bear no fruit, and it don't produce nothing that mankind can use. And the other one was just looking at him, shaking his head, agreeing, and all of a sudden, the plane tree says, how is it that you are cooling yourself in my shade, but at the same time talking about how I am of no use to mankind? Which, for me, a lot of times, like I said, when we looking at the folk tales, we got to put ourselves in several different positions. As a people, we're like that plane tree, historically and presently. We have people basking in the shade of what we did, basking in cooling themselves, protecting themselves with us and through our struggle, and making us feel bad because we want to demand something that we are owed. They look at us and they try to hit us with tricks, but like I said, we're studied in history. One of the tricks, I think, this month, since we talking about Black History Month, we need to be very clear that one of the major tricks that they're putting on us is that I want y'all to start paying attention when y'all listen to the people talk, especially black folks. And we need to start being aware of individuals that never say the word black. Mm-hmm. We got to really be careful about that, because now we got politicians that look just like us and they'll never address black. Mm-hmm. They'll always say people of color, and everybody is running away from who we are once again. And we have to be very careful about that. I mean, especially because Because, of course, right now during this month, people going to come out and talk about black history and talk about how great we were. But then as soon as March hit, it's back to people of color. It's we're all the same. And one of the things that I want to bring to the table when we're talking about African history, when we're looking at black history, our history here as a people, we need to be able to stand firm in that history and understand that we have a special status here. And I ain't talking about the status in the way the Moors talk about it. I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about is that brother, not Neely Fuller, Claude Anderson. He used a term. He says we are a non-immigrant class. We are native blacks. What's popping off right now online, if you listen in real close, and it's doing my heart good, you hear people screaming descendants of slaves. And it used to, when I heard that, it used to be like a scratch on the board. Descendants of slaves. But then when I start really thinking about it, it's sort of like me sitting up under the shade of the tree talking about how useless this tree is. This whole being a descendant of slave thing. When we look at it, we have to be very clear and understand that it's not a badge of dishonor for us to wear what we have been and wear what our ancestors have survived through. As a matter of fact, we need to bask in that glow. We need to sit in that shade and enjoy that shade because it was because of the work of our ancestors that this country is where it is right now. And rather than trying to neglect that and trying to hide from that and trying to, like some of the nonsense we tell our kids, like we all came from kings and queens, and I constantly ask the question, if that is the truth, then who took out the trash? You know what I'm saying? If we all come from kings and queens, who took out the trash? So we need to be able not only to look at history, but also look at history from a realistic point of view. If we look at the laws of Ma'at, one of those is being able to distinguish the real from the unreal. And when you're not distinguishing the real from the unreal, you are operating outside of Ma'at. So for a long time, we as black folks have been operating outside of Ma'at because we do not want to deal with the reality. We were slaves. And there's no shame in that. What we have to be able to do is to realize where we are, when we are, and why we are, so that we can fight to get back to where we want to be, rather than coming up with these illusionary standpoints. Some of our people is delusional. We're so mixed up in history. I done heard folks talk about aliens. It gets ridiculous. And as Kwame say, I don't even argue on that standpoint. But with it being Black History Month, I want to make sure that in using that folktale, that because I can speak for me, I want to make sure that I'm not those two dudes sitting up under my ancestors, not acknowledging their struggle, talking about how useless that history is, jumping right over that history and going all the way back to Kemet when we got a grand piece right here.
Yes, sir.
A resilient, brilliant people. And not negating this stuff from far back, but sometimes I think we're doing it as a self-esteem exercise rather than looking at something, because one reason I started the Daily Toast was because I started seeing people jump right over their personal ancestors. They go to the Malcolm X's and the Marcus Garveys, but they never talked about the great-grandmothers and their grandparents' struggle. It was hard for me to really get into my family history because my grandparents hid the pictures of their ancestors and really never talked to me about their ancestors because, in a sense, they were ashamed. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And how, if we jump over that whole period of our history and if we don't start doing the research on that part of our history, how will we ever get back what we are owed? You know what I'm saying? I'm a mafioso on that. You know what I'm saying? As they said in the movie, excuse my language, on Wait for the Baby to Leave. I can't remember the name of the movie. Somebody else that watched gangster movies might be familiar with this. But there was a dude that borrowed some money from a gangster and for his clothing store. He had to pay money. And he started running into problems. And the statement She back. So I ain't gonna be able to use it.
Use word, different word.
Right, okay, but
Come on.
every time homeboy had a problem, huh?
Spell it.
F-U, she spell good. You can't fool her with that. She's a speller. It's F-U,
Okay.
pay me. So they start talking about the trouble that the store owner had, and he would go to the mafia, and he'd be like, F you, pay me. It was a whole 5-minute scene about them telling this dude, I don't care what you go through. I don't care what your problems are. F you, pay me. And that's, in a sense, how we have to be. When we're dealing with these politicians, we got to see how they stand on our issues. And it's not a matter of just us looking out for us. It's us looking out for our future generations, as well as respecting the ancestors whose shoulders we directly stand upon. And because I don't want to jump out, I don't want to jump out of it no more. I want to understand the full context of our history, the glorious days, as well as the
Other glorious days.
right, as well as the pain, as well as the suffering. I want my children to be invested in that, and be able to draw the lessons as well as the wealth from that. So I think is that 10 minutes? I don't know. Did I go?
You know, brother.
So we should. I know, like I sometimes say that our history doesn't start in slavery. So you're saying don't. That's a wrong statement.
No, that's not a wrong statement. What I'm saying is because oftentimes when we say our history don't start in slavery, in the very next breath, we'll jump right over slavery and start talking about everything else. What I'm saying is that slavery need to be part of our conversation.
Thank you.
Because many of us have been directly affected by it. There's no way that you could explain the wealth disparity in America without dealing with slavery. You can't do it. You know what I'm saying? It makes no sense. And then what's going to start to happen is that as the agenda start being pressed, we're going to have people trying to make us feel guilty. Like Cory Booker coming out saying, I believe that if we take care of all America, black people's issue will be taken care of. Everywhere he go, everywhere he go, he needs to be slapped in the face for that. Not physically, but one of us need to be in the crowd and be like, that's some bullshit, homie.
That's the same agenda.
That's the same agenda. How the hell, if you got a head start and everybody, and we're in a race, and everybody gets the same thing, get the same amount of distance, and everybody get to move 20 yards ahead, that means that you still 20. You already ahead of me, you get the same 20 yards. Come on now. Slavery was the original sin of America as well as the original, because I like how homegirl put it. It was, because I think a lot of times we might get involved into looking at slavery and we start thinking that it's personal. It wasn't personal, it was business. And that's the way we have to. When white folks get up, listen, it's not personal. We can get along. It's not. It's business. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? This is the mind state that you brought us into, because we was brought over to America as capital. The worst thing that can happen in a capitalistic system is for capital to become conscious, and we have become conscious. Now we are. You know what I'm saying? You can't use conscious capital. You understand what I'm saying? So now the issue is we know. It's time for, F you pay me. Very simply. Why you keep coming in when I'm about to cuss, little girl?
Because that's your barometer.
That's not fair, man.
Right on time.
We got a pain in our heart.
Right.
And like you said, we jump over that.
That
pain is still there, like when you see what, they burn the baby's eyes out.
Right.
They fed our kids to, babies being born
Gator
to alligator. And you know that this people's done it, pay me. You owe me.
Look,
but I ain't gonna wait for you to pay me, because you've already shown me that you ain't gonna pay me. So
no, you haven't put the heat on it.
We ain't, because see, we don't know. We don't know if they're gonna pay or not. And you're right, we shouldn't wait. But the one thing we got to understand,
payday is due.
It's due, and it's just we got to do them just like the bill collectors do us.
Turn it on.
I'm calling you. I'm emailing you. I'm letting you know that I'm getting my money. See, because reparations aren't necessarily given; they're taken. You know what I'm saying? Just like liberation, you can't. Like that's why they wanted to call it emancipation. You can't give nobody freedom. It has to be taken. You know what I'm saying? And the piece that I'm saying is we have to gear ourselves and get ready, because what's going to start happening is that a lot of us, we're so used to being the Jesus of the world. I mean, because really, when you look at, for me, when you look at the whole mythology of Jesus, we done took that on wholeheartedly. We got to we got to bear all the pains of the world. You know what I'm saying? Give me your immigrants. We'll side with you and we fight with you. Give me your gay issues. We'll side with you and we'll fight with you. We take on everybody's stuff, and we will be the last. Hell with that. I got kids. I can't do that. I'm not going into that. We can't fall into that, and we can't allow people to guilt us into that. If everybody else's issues can be talked about and put on the table, ours need to be talked about and put on the table. And you got this white girl, Marianne Williamson. She's talking about, if she run for president, she's talking about reparations, and she's talking about $100 billion. And I'm like, cool. I mean, because really, I don't have nothing to get Kamala Harris or Cory Booker. I don't have any. My issue is politics is not about me liking you because you look like me. Politics is about what you're going to give me for my vote. What you're going to give me and my group. And we got to be realistic about politics. I don't want another nigga like Obama. And so that everybody be whispering, we can't put no pressure because he can't do it and then all of a sudden he's not black people's president, he's the country's president. But yet when it came to everybody else got something. And we're made to feel bad because we're mad because we ain't getting nothing. But we ain't putting the pressure on. So anybody that come in, if they don't come in addressing us directly as a group and saying, this is how we're going to rectify American history, we don't need them.
Don't even vote.
You ain't getting nothing from me. On my fault. And Marianne Williams says she wanted to give us $100 billion. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's like me telling.
Whose bank we gonna put it in?
Huh?
We got to think about, what system do we have that we can even administer that type of funds? And if they're gonna change the money to pink.
That too, but that affects everybody. You can't change. You just can't change it for us. You want to change it for everybody.
What about this? I'm sitting here thinking. What about the generation of us, black people, right? Mm-hmm. Of us, that it's a form of slavery anyway. Because we sending our children to college. They got these damn student loans. The lady talk about it on there. And these student loans are carrying us. You could be married with damn children and still have student loans for your damn self. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to fix that matter. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. That could be part of the reparations package.
Yeah, that's part of when they come to us with their what they're going to do. If you're not talking reparations to black folks, you shouldn't be talking to black folks at all.
And the issue of reparations.
Well, it can come in a lot of different forms.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We need to go on and as groups, we need to talk about some of the ideas that can be used for us. You know what I'm saying? And at least in the coming politics, because even when somebody running for dog catcher, you know what I'm saying? The piece we got to ask them is, how you feel about reparations? You know what I'm saying? Because we want people to understand this is where we at. This is where black people are. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if you running for dog catcher or police chief or how do you feel about this? You know what I'm saying? Because the pressure need to be put on. Because my thing is just getting it as part of the conversation. Because I'm not as interested in winning with anybody. At this point in time, what I'm interested in is making this part of the national conversation, especially our conversation.
There's a group that has been focusing on reparation for years.
In Cobra?
In Cobra. A good friend of mine is in that. She lives in Louisiana now, Colfax, and they have a conference every year. They've been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. Reparation, trying to get that voice out there. Reparations.
And when they tell us reparations can't happen,
don't believe it.
1862, they gave reparations to white slave owners.
And they gave them to the Jews. I heard the
The Chinese.
Japanese.
The Japanese, shoot.
They're giving it to everybody.
Wait a
Everybody
minute.
was getting.
Now, also,
And we
you-
still being enslaved by the shit
well,
that they
part of it is we have a problem of speaking with one voice and understanding that we've got to get organized, because you just can't say, like they said, you could say reparation today, tomorrow every Cadillac dealer be empty the cars. If we don't organize, how we going to have it dispensed to us?
Right.
And also we got to
And
be
Cobra,
In Cobra.
also
they've been doing it for a long
No, I
time
got you.
and organized. They are organized.
But they're still
We don't need
small.
another organization.
Don't get lost in sauce. The point is, majority has to become that
You're
way.
never
and
gonna
see,
get the majority.
majority. When I say
Not a
majority, I don't mean every single household. Because
do you
you
mean
got
then?
the Jews got paid. They didn't have every single household, but they had enough lobbyist group to where they hit them from many different angles.
I think we got that.
Okay.
I think
That's the
I think
point that
that's
we
out
gotta
there. And I got to agree with Mama Lona. I think we got enough people out there who understand reparation, who wants it, and who have put that out there. You know, and they just haven't. You know, we just haven't bust them side of the head with nothing yet.
Well,
you know
you
what I'm
got to do what
I
the
think
Claude
that-
Ensign's doing too. You got to come
Excuse
from insurance companies. You got to come from different avenues. You just can't come from one. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. You just don't think you can just come from, like in Cobra. Yes, they've been out there. They've been doing it. They've been hitting it. We've got to come with more than just in Cobra to make this work.
Well, all we have to do is join in Cobra. You know?
That's
Right.
true.
or,
Right.
That's
or
not.
just speak out because this is the issue. On the internet now, if you go on the internet now, one of the hot topics right now is descendants of slaves. DOS
Yes.
or ADOS. And there are a lot of new black media companies that are out speaking about this very issue. So all over the country right now, all over the world, because I got a woman that called in from Burkina Faso that's talking about this. You know what I'm saying?
Kim?
Yeah. Call talking about this. She's keeping up with it.
Wagaduzu.
Ouagadougou, right? Burkina Faso, and she's listening. And then also another issue that we're gonna have to deal with, and this is why I keep on talking about the tribe and up, the Tawi village, and this whole family. We have to circle the wagons in a sense, so that we can start. Because what'll happen is they'll start pushing this issue and to make it work. The Hispanics will try to get in on it. Those that's claiming Latinos, the Dominicans who say they ain't black, I'm Dominican, you know, you done ran into all those people. And then even some of these, because we have to register and be clear on that this is for descendants of slavery, descendants of American slavery. You know what I'm saying? Puerto Rico might be able to get in because they are American, you know what I'm saying?
They got African blood.
They got not just but that's just we got to take it farther than African blood, because we need to understand that we're going to shake down the government. Now, who the government shake down to get the money, I don't care about it. You know what I'm saying? But we need to make sure that people understand it's American descendants of slaves, and we got to be clear on what does that mean and how does that look, because then we're gonna have people who's going to be trying to get in that became black when they heard about it. You know what I'm saying? I'm a descendant of a slave when they you from Jamaica.
So now,
Or your mother might, and even people be marrying in.
Well, keep in mind, when you say history, you need to understand history. The Dawes Road, are you familiar with that?
What is it?
Dawes Road. Have you? Doles. The Dawes Road was a time where the Indians were getting reparation when they got some of the reservations and so forth, all their monies.
And the white folks
They had
started
white folks that would put forth
declaring
$1 to declare themselves to get on the road to say they were part Indian and get some of this reservation money.
But they just passed something where every Indian in Virginia was classified as black. So, you know.
Yeah, I saw that on the internet just recently. But you know, got, what's the lady named that's running for president? Warren.
Amalita Harris.
No, the white woman. That's
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. She went and made sure that people understand that she is part quarter, 64th, whatever, part American, Native American, okay? Now, keep in mind, if something like when we start getting into, like Brother Hatem is saying, when we start getting into where we really making a goal at it and go at it, and it's starting to get hot for America, and that they're about ready to do the reparation, you're going to have white folks buying in saying, I'm part black, I'm part this. You're going to have that again. But see, if you don't know the history of how this happened with American and other ethnic groups, you're going to get caught. We're going to get caught by it again.
But the Constitution is sets aside something for descendants of slaves. When I was reading
The amendments all talk about a lot of things. Remember, we initially supposed to get 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah.
Jackson vetoed that. Well, nixed that, I just say. I ain't going to say veto.
But there's something in the Constitution. We keep on calling ourselves everything but black. So when we don't call ourselves black, that negates, when we say we're people of color, that takes us out.
See, that's the argument that Claude Anderson's been fighting because there's quite a few issues. What is it, 1866? It's a couple of, I don't know the exact dates, but there's a couple of laws, like you're saying, that have basically set aside things for black folks. But again, when you do not know your history and you're ashamed of your the so-called slave history, you miss all that.
Do you think that what we haven't done is at least, set a time on, let's say for example, now a lot of us are 60s and 50s and 40s. That's been a long time and we ain't got no reparation yet, right? Mm-hmm. So if we say that, look, by 2025 or 30, you see what I'm saying? We're going to have it. You know what I'm saying? So that would mean from here on, we got to start putting fucking pressure. You know what I'm saying? For that to come about. I think that we haven't set a time on when we want to get this. Because if you say to yourself, I'm going to retire from my job at 65, you set a time on that shit. You know what I'm saying? Right. So you could be ready to do that when you get ready to retire. And I think that we need to set a time on when we're going to get this reparation. Because if we don't set no time, then that shit, then reparation don't exist for them. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? For them who giving the reparation. I think we need to have a time zone, a time frame on when we want to get this shit, so they'll know that we serious.
So this has been a lively discussion, and in essence of time, we should wrap it up, but when we have divine conversation, that's when we can delve into this a lot more.
If you all allow me 2 minutes, I just want 2 minutes.
Let me finish mine. Let me close mine out. Dear white Jesus, we come to you humbly. Look, y'all balls y'all heads, man. Go on, man. I'm through with y'all. See, y'all done told me.
I'm getting ready to hit you, man.
I seen you.
I'm looking at you crazy.
I'm getting ready to hit you upside your head, man. Give my 2 minutes.
I'm not going to say, give Clifford this 2 minutes if you're going down that path.
I'm trying to be.
And Lorna was getting ready to nix my 2 minutes.
Right. Saying.
Over some white
She said, we're sorry, Dick.
I love you.
I want to know why you rolling that off your tongue.
We always on the
You saying it like it feels good to you.
It rolls off good.
I know why it feels good to her. Because that was the only word she ever said to Nomo that just shut Nomo's mouth. Nomo couldn't even respond to it. I'm sorry.
He's done. That's why I was trying to stop Clifford. He says 2 minutes, but it takes him.
It's taking me 2 minutes. Pay attention.
I am paying attention. And I'm stopping you soon.
You ain't got it. It's going to be running out.
This is part of your 2 minutes.
That's right.
So,
While we're looking at that, let's get ready to take up collection.
who's starting?
Take that your background music.
Dime gone. See?
Yeah.
I throw that away. You told me throw it away.
What about the drink?
I threw the drink. I threw the bottle away.
I'm gonna put the bottle in there to make it that 20 even. You know what I mean?
That's how I tell you.
I gotta go out and get the check.
Give him the whole thing. He gave him that whole 19. You give him the whole 19, huh?
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, you keep in your mind what they give until I.
Kwame gave $19.10.
What?
And if I had my plastic bottle,
Y'all go recycle out and get the check.
who's this playing?
This is just 10 facts, 25 facts you need to know about slavery.
One of them is Drapetomania.
Yep, Drapetomania. They had to cut off the toe to make that work.
You know, I don't care if you get something. I ain't trying to fight that you don't get it, but I'm just trying to make sure that we get all our shit.
The thing that always to me when we talk about the slavery period, it's like you think about it, and then you know what happened. How could you possibly like white people?
That's the reason why I push this.
No, I get it. I don't need to hear
I'm not
it
saying
anymore.
you ain't the only one.
But you're usually talking to the choir.
No, we're talking talking to people who really don't understand who they are and from whence they come. That's primarily
I
what it's
had
coming
a
from.
friend for 30 years. She said, she got upset with me. I mentioned reparations. My sister, first of all, accused me of things that I've never done in all the 30 years I've known her. For example, talking down to her. Claiming that she couldn't pay bills, and things of that nature. I'm like, where's this coming from? But that aside, she said she was not going to be angry about something that happened in the past. She said she didn't think her ancestors would want her to benefit from what they went through.
True.
And I'm listening, and I'm like,
Theirs did.
okay, but see again, I'm like Billy Fuller Jr. on that. I'm not going to argue with you about white folks.
So she's not. So when they say if you want reparations because you are a descendant of African
Slaves.
Black slaves.
then you're not in the group.
Descendants of American
Descendants of
ADOS, American descendants of slaves. You got to be very specific because other people try to squeeze up in it.
Descendants of slaves. That's who we are. We're American.
Okay, family, we collected $163.10.
Y'all did. Shit. They ain't got $100,000 shit.
You got $100. Where'd that come from?
That's where the thing come from. $100.
We are American descendants of slaves.
We want to put in 1 and 2.
We have people that.
I understand, but you're not supposed to count that as dues. You know what I'm saying?
We don't know how much we're supposed to put in.
In Cobra,
You're not supposed to count that
Says
dues.
we separated when we
That we're descendants of Africans enslaved in
and then we
America.
separated out when we
I
deposited.
understand that, but you're supposed to.
That ain't the one popping off right now. I'm just saying.
In DOA makes you think of something else. You know what I mean?
Descendant of Africa. Because the problem with that is that gives people room to wiggle out because now we're talking about an international cabal that we got right now. I'm looking for America's spot. You know what I'm saying? So in Cobra, and like I said, in Cobra, I'm not super familiar with, so I got to go because I forgot all about in Cobra until y'all just mentioned them right now because they have been fighting for a very long time.
A long time.
If you were involved,
So.
came through our finances, we would show you something.
What's the other one? The other group?
Well, actually, it's just new media. If you look up hashtag ADOS or hashtag DOS, you're gonna see all of the people having conversations under them. Major one. Remember the one girl I sent you, Yvette Cornell? She real big on that. Tone Talks, Professor Black Truth, the Black Authority, Tariq Nasheed, all the others. There's quite a few others.
I don't benefit from that.
Let's do the pledge to my eye. This will be back sometime. I get around you guys, my language is bad.
Blame it on the alcohol.
Okay.
9. Are you on page 9?
Page 9. He used to stop me from cursing because I came from a cursing family. And he stopped me and I'm flipping back. My art is great.
My art is great.
Its value is lasting.
Its value is lasting.
It has remained unchanged and unequal.
It has remained unchanged and unequal
Since the time of its creator.
since the time of its creator.
It is a plain path.
It is a plain path,
Even for the ignorant.
even for the ignorant.
Those who violate its laws are
Those
punished.
who violate its laws are punished.
My art urges moral excellence in all one does.
My art urges moral excellence in all one does.
So no fault can be found in your character.
So no fault can be found in your character.
My art is truth.
My art is truth.
My art is justice.
My art is justice.
My art is righteousness.
My art is righteousness.
My art is balance.
My art is balance.
My art is order.
My art is order.
My art is harmony.
My art is harmony.
My art is reciprocity.
My art is reciprocity.
Do that which is right.
Do that which is right,
That you may live long on earth.
that you may live long on earth.
Think my art.
Think my art.
Speak my art.
Speak my art.
Do my art.
Do my art.
In secular and sacred situations.
In secular and sacred situations.
My art will ensure.
My art will
A
ensure
mutually beneficial community.
a mutually beneficial community
And everlasting life.
and everlasting life.
Shemotep.
Shemotep.
You gotta get us a brother.